Are we ready? Full and ready to go? You could still breathe with that mask on. Bella, mask, face. Oh boy. Okay. We are doing 1.6 today. Our proper markers this time. Okay, the title is Relations. Okay, we sadly have a lot of vocabulary to cover. Okay, first thing we're going to talk about is a coordinate system. What it is, or how it's found, it is formed by the intersection of two lines called the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. All this is a fancy way of saying a graph. Coordinate system is just the fancy word for a graph. Okay, a graph has two lines on it. Remember, your spelling is not super important, so as long as I understand it. Trying to listen when I write is good. So we can get through it, okay? So, if we're thinking about a graph, right, it has two lines and they cross. I just made a graph. You normally see it like this. What are these two lines called that we're used to calling them? Matthew. The X and Y axis. We all remember those words? Now, which one is which is the big key. How do we know which one is which? Anyone other than Matthew remember which one is which? What do you mean top? The one that goes up and down is called the y-axis. You remember it because the y has the tail up and down. That's how you remember it's the y-axis, which means the left and right one, which is also called a horizontal line, is called the x-axis. We just call them x and y, but yes. Okay, other things on this graph. Do you know what we call this point right here where they intersect, where those two lines cross each other, where the x-axis and the y-axis cross? Bella, you still don't have your mask on your face. Does anyone remember what that point is called? It starts with an O. Origin is the correct name. I'm just labeling it origin. Okay. If I put a dot just randomly right here, what's another word? What do we call something on a graph that's called a dot? We don't call it a dot, though. We call it something else. A point. Yep. That's just a point. Right? And we can label it with numbers, can't we? In parentheses, we can say, hey, our x number, comma, or y in parentheses. Right? We do that all the time. We say like 2, 3, and it represents something. Do you remember what this is called? That group, the parentheses, x, comma, y, parentheses, it has a name. Those pair of numbers called a something pair. Well, their class didn't remember either. Oh, hoping someone was ahead of the game. It is called a ordered pair. All these words are things we need to know. So an ordered pair is just when they give you a point, but they give a specific amount. So in the parentheses, 2 comma 3, that's an ordered pair, okay? Okay, so now we need to talk about what a relation really is, because we have a title, but we don't even know what that word means. So a relation, let's give its definition. It is a set of ordered pairs, which really means it's just a big group of ordered pairs. It's that simple. You're just going to be given a bunch of them. That's a relation. Okay, it can also be shown in lots of forms. Next, write ways to be shown. You're okay. Just in case, you never know. Okay, it can be shown as a graph, which we just talked about. It can be shown as a table. Do we remember what a table is in math? I'm not talking about like a table like the desk you're sitting at. That's a table. Do you remember what a table is in math? Anybody remember that? What's a table in math? Matthew? Yep. Table looks like a little T chart. Says X and Y on it. We'll do an example of each. A graph, right? It just looks like a graph, which right there. And then the last kind, list is ordered pairs. We did that. Last kind is called mapping. This is the one we never remember what it means or what it looks like. Once you see it, you'll know. Ooh, Bella? Nope, that's just when we graph the regular point. Mapping sounds weird because it sounds like you would be putting on a picture like a map, like in history class. But mapping is kind of like a table in a weird form. Mapping, I'll give you a little image. It looks like this. It has like 2 ovals next to each other. Those are really ugly. One has all your X numbers in it. One has all your Y numbers in it. And you draw a line from one to another. Like if this had a 1 and this had a 3, you'd say, oh, the point 1 comma 3, you draw a line. Say, hey, that's a point. Does that kind of come back to you? We'll do an example. Those are all types of relations, just how we show them. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about the word domain. Does anyone know what the word domain means? Like, this is my domain. But in math, like on this graph. We're either talking about our X amounts or our Y amounts. You want to take a guess? It's a 50-50 shot. What do you think we're talking about if I say, this is my domain and move my arms in front of the camera? I think I'm talking about my X's or my Y's if I'm going like this. My X's. Yep, domain is all the X values of the relation. Then we can take a really good, strong assumption of what range means. Because if domain means that definition, what do you think range is going to mean? Almost the same. What do you think it's going to mean, Gage? All the y's, yep, all the y values. Of the relation. Now these guys both have a really important rule. 2 rules actually. So put a little star. I'm going to make sure to remember. First part of the rule is we write our numbers in least to greatest form. All right, so we're just going to make a list. 1, 2, 52. The other really important thing is no repeats. What do you think I mean by no repeats? Ever, in general, what do you think? What's that mean? No repeats of the same number. So if I'm writing my domain down and 2 my points have 2 as their x's, we're only going to have to write 2 once. Now if my domain and range both have the number 2, those are 2 different questions, right? So they're allowed to have the number 2. But in my domain, they cannot repeat. In my range, it cannot repeat. Okay? Now we're going to take all this information and we're going to do an example. Okay? I'm going to switch boards. Okay, this is what the question looks like or is expressed to you. It says, express. Hunter, do you still need that other board? Do you still need that other board? Okay. I have it here if you need it. Express, and then it gives you the group. So it gives you a fancy bracket, which if you don't know how to draw it, it's an S and then a 2. Just try real hard. We'll work on them this year. First order pair is 2, 5. Then parentheses. A second order pair is -2, 3. Third order pair is 5, -2. Third order pair is -1, -2. And we're going to close our fancy brackets. Those are all our points. It says express that information as a table, comma, graph, comma, and a map, period. Then state the domain and range. So basically, I take everything we just learned and put it all together. So I always start with easiest. So that's our ordered pair. This is our relation, the problem we have, all those points. I always start with the table because it's the easiest to do. It has no rules to it. Map even has rules. Okay? So table. I'm going to label it for now. You do not have to. Might help. Table is just a little chart, right? X is on the left, Y is on the right. You just put your ordered pairs next to each other. So if my first point is 2, 5, I'm just going to put 2 on the left, 5 on the right, right next to each other. Just do that for all my ordered pairs. So then -2 next to 3, 5 next to -2, then -1 next to -2. Basically just rewrote them in a different form. That's easy, yes? Can we do this part? Confirmation with head nods of some kind? Yep, pretty easy? Okay. What do you want to do next? You want to do the table? Ooh, falling asleep is what we're doing. Do you want to do the graph or the map next? You can choose. What you thinking? Anybody? You want to do the graph next? Man, almost nobody ever says graph next. Okay, let's do the graph next. Okay, now I am going to give you, I have papers up front, kind of in front of Morgan, basically directly in front of Crystal. They're just up there on the table so that you see how ugly that graph is, so that you don't have to draw these graphs. The grids are already there. That takes us half our time, right, just trying to draw them. So I'm going to put 5 tallies on here, if I can count, because my biggest number on all those numbers is 5. So I can plot my points. How do we plot a point? Little reminder. First point is 2 for x, 5 for y. So you start at the middle, remember? So you go over 2, because my x's is left or right. So positive 2 is to the right, and then up 5. So if I put a point, how am I going to know that that is that point? How am I going to label it so I know that that's that point? Because I'm going to have 4 points on here, aren't I? I can get them confused and not know which one's which. How can we label that point? I could put the order pair next to it, right? I could do, okay, hey, this is 2, 5. I could do that. That is one option. That one takes some work, and it's have to write small, and then you can't read my numbers. There is another way. Does anyone know the other way? Yeah, you could use A, B, C, and D. You could use letters instead. So if on your original problem, you want to go, hey, you know what? That's my A point. That's my B. That's my C, and that's my D. That way I wouldn't have to write all of that. I just have to write one letter instead. So it's up to you. Can you do both? They both are correct? Yes. But one is smaller than the other. One is easier to write, and 2 takes up less space, okay? So then B, I'm starting at B, I'm going to use the other letters because they take up less space. So -2, so to the left 2, and then +3, so up 3. So then look, I only have to write B. See how much more space that saves? Just in case I'm going to have to put a point near it, I don't have to mess it up. Okay, then C, +5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Down 2. 1, 2. That is C. And then D, -1 for x, which is left 1, and then down 2. Right, so sometimes it is a little quicker, right? The only bad time is if your D looks like an O, which on the computer kind of does, doesn't it? It looks like a D up here, if it makes you feel any better. It's the marker. It's not me. Now let's talk about the map. They also call it mapping. I'm just going to call it the map. So they always use, sometimes like ovals. They just use little circles. Okay, now, they're not even. X's go on the left still, Y's go on the right. Mapping, like your domain and range, you cannot repeat. So I always use my table to help me. Look at all your X values. Look at all your X values. Did any of those numbers repeat? Do they? We're good. So I can just copy these numbers straight over here. So 2, -2, 5, and -1. So just copy that right over. Now my Y's, look at your Y's real quick. Do any of those numbers repeat? Yeah. So we do not want to write the repeats. We just write it once. So I'm going to write a 5 because I only see it once, a 3, and then since there's 2 of those, I'm only going to write one of those -2s. Now to show the order pairs I'm mapping, you just draw a line. So one of my order pairs was 2, 5. So from 2 to 5, I draw a line. B, the point was -2, 3. So from -2 and x to 3, I draw a line. C, the point was 5, -2. So from 5 to -2, I draw a line. D, -1 to -2. So then that's why there's 2 lines going to one number, right? Because we do not write the repeats. That's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. Okay. So what do we have left to do? Did I get everything done it told me to do in my instructions? What did I miss? Huh? It says state the domain and range. We did the big part at the top, but it says then state the domain and range. So domain and range, we're going to have to do those. Again, domain and range, what's it say in our definition? Go back to it. All the x values of the relation or all the y values. We're just talking about the numbers, right? So I always look at my table or look at your map, right? Because it says no repeats, right? So look at your map. What's all the x values of your relation? But it says write the numbers in least to greatest order. So what's my lowest x value I have? -2. I'm leaving space in front of them at -2 for a reason. What's my next lowest? -1. I'll put a comma between them, right? Showing that they're separate numbers. What's after that? 2. Last? 5. This is a group, isn't it? To show this is a group of numbers, they put the fancy brackets around it for domain and range every single time. This is where practicing our fancy brackets really helps, so you can read them. You know when you used to draw like birds in the sky back in the day when you were kids, those ugly bird things. You can draw them like that, turn it sideways. You can draw it like that for now. I'll take it for now. Now my range, least to greatest. Again, look at your map. If you look at your map, did you already get rid of your repeats? Yeah, and we don't want repeats here anyway. What's your lowest number? -2. There's a negative there. Next lowest number? 3. Last number? Is it okay that these have different amounts of numbers in them? Yeah, because one had a repeat, right? That's why we had 4 numbers, but we had a repeat there. So it's okay that these are different sizes. That's allowed. Now, did we answer every part of the question? Yes, ma'am, we did. That's good. Okay, we got that. Last part is 2 words that you've already talked about because you took science class. These 2 words. Independent variable and dependent variable. Real question is, what do they mean, right? So an independent variable is a variable that determines the output. You learn this in science, right? It's the thing that you start with, right? It's not affected by other things. Math and science, they're almost the same in this way, okay? A lot of the times, independent is our x. And then our dependent is its word is exactly what it means, okay? The variable depends, it's got the word right in the definition, on the value of the independent variable. And this would be our y, right, if we had an equation. You have to be able to look at a sentence, and there's 4 of them in your homework, and figure out which one's your independent and which your dependent, or describe it to me. Right? So if it says, I'm going to read this to you and I want you to listen, see what you think. It says, my dance committee wants to sell tickets for their fall ball. The more tickets they sell, the greater amount of money they can spend on decorations. We need to figure out what's our independent and dependent. Oh boy. Woo! So try and see if you can look at those 4. You only have 10 questions. It's on page 45, 1 through 10. There's only 4 of them. See if what's the thing you started with, what's the thing that depends on the other thing. You just have to say what's independent, what's dependent, okay? Try them out. See how it goes. Okay, don't forget to clean my calculators for me, please. Whole 45-minute schedule really threw us off today.